They add storage every year, but the overall production outpaces it.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Comstock channel. I'm Marlin Bohling with you. I appreciate you joining us. And it's my pleasure to welcome aboard the president of Comstock Investments, Mr. Matthew Kruse. He joins us today for our weekly chat about South American conditions and whatever else is relevant in the markets. So, Matthew, welcome aboard. Appreciate that.
Morning.
So what's top of mind here for you today?
What's top of mind is it's 4 below zero outside right now.
Golly.
That's what I'm thinking about. I'm just trying to make it to next week when we get up to 50. So things are going to change quickly.
And you're not talking wind chill either, right?
No.
My goodness. So how bad is it?
I should have stayed in Brazil a few more weeks, right?
Oh, yeah. You came back a little too soon. So I'm hearing that there could be wind chills in the Dakotas, for example, like 50, 60 below.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. Yeah,
I mean, that can
those
be
areas are known
lethal
for that.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
We're doing events like we're going to be doing with Comstock in, I think it's February coming up. And it's just right now, we've kind of gotten into a rhythm and we like doing what we're doing. And it's been really rewarding. So for right now, we're kind of just rolling with it and having fun.
If we don't drive home the negative consequences of not doing it, and we don't make people aware of those things that they're not doing that can help the culture in their business, they're not going to do it.
Come with an open mind. If you're a person who's hesitant to social media, I definitely understand that some people do not see a value in it. And I do think social media can be a massive waste of time if you're not using it correctly. So if you're skeptical, that is fine with me.
Kind of the stereotypical State Farm corn and soybeans. We just rotate every year. So just shy of 2,000 acres.
It sounds awesome. I know where I'm in Des Moines, Iowa. I enjoy telling stories and telling our story and telling what happened to us business-wise. You know, there was a lot of good and positive things. There's been negative things. There's been a lot of mistakes. You know, a lot of what we learned from is like, oh, we screwed that up. We could have done that better.
Family Farm Masterclass that'll be coming up in February in Des Moines, Iowa. Anyway, alrighty. Well, we hope everybody can stay safe out there, and best wishes to everybody out there. Well, let's talk about conditions in South America. That's where you are an expert. You're well versed in what's going on in that part of the world. And of course, that is our chief competitor when it comes to soybeans, for example. So I know from time to time you like to get us updated on what the weather outlooks are. We're getting toward the latter part of the growing season. What's in store here for this week?
Well, as we talked about in prior weeks, there has been kind of a drying effect in the northern growing regions of Brazil, specifically there in Mato Grosso, and that has allowed the soybean harvest to kind of accelerate and to the point where it's kind of caught up to its historical average. I think they're roughly around 30% complete overall in the country. In the state of Mato Grosso, I think this past weekend they reached 50% complete, and I would kind of guesstimate that they're probably heading towards 2/3 complete in Mato Grosso by this weekend. And so they're moving at a rapid pace now. They just needed the skies to kind of open up and the rainfall to let up. But I calculated they harvested about 22% of their state in Mato Grosso in 1 week. And so they could do that again this week. And you're talking like 380 million, almost 400 million bushels just in that one state in 1 week alone. And so that's, looking out until next Monday, it kind of shows the same thing where there's kind of improved rain in parts of Argentina, and then below rainfall average here at least through early next week. And so you go to the next weather chart, that eventually it's got the rain. The season isn't over yet, so they still need it to rain. And so this kind of shows going out to mid-March that the rainfall forecasts do come back and they improve. And so they're obviously going to need rainfall for the Saffrina corn that they're planting right now. They need the moisture for that to germinate. And so we've kind of said they they needed it to pause a little bit to get the soybeans out and get cut up on harvest, but they still need rainfall to come back. And so looking at this, it would indicate that there's still plenty of rainfall ahead for large parts of Brazil.
So if the weather has been cooperative with soybean harvest, that tells me that the Saffrina corn crop is maybe catching up with their planting progress. What do you think?
Yeah, it's actually ahead of schedule. I think in Mato Grosso it was behind schedule, and now it's kind of catching up. And places like Paraná are well ahead of schedule. And so as long as they can get 70% of their Saffrina corn in by February 20th, which, what is that? I think that's like Thursday or Friday this week. There should not be any significant yield lag. I know some people have different numbers. I've seen other numbers that say, they look for 85% by March 1st. But I guess in my experience, it kind of looked to have, ideally window to not have any yield lag. You want to have the crop in by February 20th. And rarely they do. And so there's some that plant into early March, just knowing that they're going to have a yield lag, and they accept that. So while they started out behind, I think they're catching up quickly.
So I understand we have some new CONAB estimates out now. That would be the Brazilian equivalent of USDA, I guess. Walk us through these numbers here. Any surprises?
CONAB came out with their updated February report here last week, and they didn't make many changes to the overall soybean production estimates. They were at 166 million metric tons. That's what it was in January. And so right at that 6.1 billion bushels. They did increase acres a little bit more. I think they found another 125,000 acres, but they shaved production or yield off, I think, by 1/10 of a bushel. And so overall the production stayed the same. But so they're at a whopping 117.25 million acres for the overall soybean crop. And so in the case of the corn, they did increase it by, I want to say, 2.5 million metric tons. They increased both yield and acres as well. And so you kind of see the breakdown there, that second crop is really what matters the most. The third crop is pretty insignificant at under 100 million bushels. And, when stocks are tight, the first crop can still matter. It's close to 1 billion bushels, but it's that second crop that's like 78% of the overall production in Brazil that matters most. And so that's what's being planted right now. And it's what is going to compete with our U.S. corn exports in the second half of the year, and it's being planted now.
On that third crop of corn, is that all in the north where you get closer to the equator?
A lot of it's in the northeast. I suppose, it is a little bit further north and close to the equator, but a lot of it's in the northeast and under irrigation a lot of times. I know Bahia is a big production state for the third crop.
Well, let's take a look at the soybean production as they think it'll fit in this year. Definitely an uptrending line, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear what's going on in over the years with Brazil's production. When I first went to Brazil back in 2001, they produced about 38 million metric tons there, and you can see now they're what is that, 5 times that roughly, a little or more, just in the last 20 years. And so you can kind of see a lot of that's due to the acreage, of course, but their yield has improved as well, as has ours. And so, going 20 years ago, they're averaging 40 bushels per acre. And what's impressive to me is they're still getting good yields overall as a country while expanding these acres. And so there have been years where they've out yielded us, at 52.4 bushels per acre, back in the 2021 season. Right now for this season, they're targeting, I think it's 51.9 bushels per acre. Now, that's on 117 million acres. And so to me, that's pretty impressive that they're still managing to get those yields. And it's a good year for them. They had that one year you can see in 21-22 where with drought, they got kick back down to below 45 bushels per acre, but you could still see that there's still a steady upward trend for the most part with their soybean yield that works in conjunction with the production. And so it's probably going to start to slow now a little bit, but it's still no reason to think, that it would go down, I guess. So
what strikes me is, since that chart started here at the turn of the century, I mean, the yield went up like maybe 30%, but the production went up 500%.
Yeah.
Just
Yep.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, most of it's coming from the acres, right? The acres expansion, but not all of it. Some of it's probably 20% of the growth is coming from the production, the yield increase, but the majority of it is coming from the acres.
That's crazy. That's phenomenal growth. Gee, if only we could do that here. Of course, then beans would be about $1 a bushel, I guess. So how are they coming out? Are they making money this year?
By and all, it's not a money-making proposition, at least in places like Mato Grosso. And so I kind of did some research and converted some numbers from a state ag institute in Mato Grosso. And we had done these numbers, I think, last week on corn, and somebody asked me to do the same thing on their soybeans to see what their profitability levels are like. And so, as their cost overall is $519 per acre. Well, seems pretty low compared to my farm in Iowa, which is closer to $780 per acre. We have these big cash rents that we got to pay in Iowa that really increases the cost dramatically. And so you think, well, at 520, that's pretty competitive, lower cost of production compared to Iowa, but their cash price is significantly less, especially when you get to this harvest time period. And not that long ago, last month, if you still had old crop beans, you probably could have got $11 for it. And as they're now kind of in the peak of harvest season, I guess you'd say, right in the middle of it, Mato Grosso prices, of course, has collapsed, and as they usually do. And there's this major supply glut that hits the market, and freight rates, I read, shoot up 70%, and just all the roads and everything are highly congested with trucks, and so it severely strains their transportation and logistic capacity, and it's just hard for them to store it all. And so right now their cash price in Mato Grosso is around that, equivalent to that $830, and their yield is good overall. They bumped it up. It was 54. They're bumping it up to 55 overall for the state. They might increase that some more yet. It wouldn't surprise me if they increase that a little yet, but kind of going off of the latest projection CONAB's had, I mean, that comes out to a $62 per acre loss. And I guess if you got 100 acres, maybe it's not so bad. But when you got 10,000 acres or 20,000 acres, like so many of those operations do, the losses add up pretty quick. And, obviously this is just the average. I mean, there are people that will, yield 60 or 65 bushels per acre. I think I calculated you needed closer to 63 bushels per acre just to break even. And so, but yeah, it's the big difference at the end of the day is going to be the marketing. And if the producers can hold that crop into the off season and kind of get past the seasonal harvest lows, the 9.5 times out of 10, the price rebounds. And obviously it takes, cash flow to do that. It takes storage capacity, which Brazil is known for notoriously having neither. And so that's why there's a select group that can take advantage of that. But I think as many I've read that as much as 50% of the growers in Mato Grosso are doing the input barter exchange, meaning they buy their inputs, chemicals, fertilizer, those types of things. In exchange, they deliver X number of soybeans at harvest. And so, so as much as half of the beans are already contracted for before they even begin planting. And so that it just kind of leaves the the farmer with not much less. So I suppose for U.S. growers, this is maybe a good thing, because the only thing that's really going to stop or slow down their acreage growth are negative margins. As long as they're making money, they're going to want to expand. And so, they slowed acres down this year, but they still added, I added 3%, I think, something like that. It was like 1.7 million acres from last year. And which surprised me that it was that much. I thought it was going to be, below 1%. And but I think there's a lag. I think as this continues and the losses pile up, I think you're going to see growth slow down for going into next year. It just seems inevitable.
Well, and I know you've mentioned it in the past, but in Brazil, they don't have much on-farm storage. So it's hard for them to ride through, like a marketing year low to get to higher prices, because most of what they have is commercial storage, right?
One of the best investments for farmers in Brazil, and you could make this case anywhere, I suppose, but especially in Brazil, just because the seasonal highs and lows are much more distinct in Brazil, is storage. But yet, the capacity overall as a country comes in somewhere at like 15% of storage capacity. And that doesn't change. They add storage every year, but the overall production outpaces it. It continues to increase, and their storage capacity stays at that 15% more or less. Where I think in the U.S. it's somewhere like 65% or 70%, something like that. And so that's a big advantage that we have. But they could probably get the storage built. That's almost the easy part. The hard part is having the cash flow to keep those bins full, for 6 months into the off season. That's the hard part, because it's just a cash intensive business where you're, wrapping up harvest, and you already pretty soon you got to start buying inputs or whatnot for next season, and you need the money to do that. So you got to have money for 2 crops in Brazil. That's really would be ideal.
Well, another commodity that has garnered a lot of headlines this year, one is cocoa. Another one is coffee. And I know your family is involved in coffee production in Brazil. And, if you take a look at the latest coffee charts here, my word, I mean, that's what you call a parabolic move. What do we do with this? Looks like you can maybe retire this year.
You convert all the corn and beans in Iowa to coffee production.
Yeah.
Right? It's not going to handle the -4 degree weather very well, but it's crazy. I think it was in December I first talked about this. Like, Marlin, we just made a new all-time high in coffee, and since then we just steamrolled that and have moved another buck per pound higher. And so you kind of see where those all-time highs was. That's what I was trying to give a mental picture to people that we blew through the 2011 high in 1997, and then the all-time high was back in 1977, 50 years ago nearly, and we just went through that like it wasn't there. And it reminded me exactly what happened in the cocoa market, which last year, I think the all-time high was like 5,200 points in cocoa, and it just steamrolled that, and then went, more than doubled from what the all-time high was. And so it gets to this point where, the managed money and the speculators take over. I feel like obviously there's some fundamental reasons for prices to be elevated. There's been several below average production years in Brazil, which Brazil is the largest coffee producing country by far. Almost 40% of the world's production comes from Brazil. But Vietnam, who's a distant second in production, had a terrible drought last year, lost like close to 25% of their crop. And so, and that's happening at a time when demand is continuing to surge. China has grown an appetite for coffee. They used to just drink tea, and now they decide they like coffee too. And so they've been going and making deals in Brazil to buy up parts of the coffee market. And so all these things have happened just in a few short years and relatively short amount of time, and coffee prices have surged. Now, that being said, it seems like what's happening on ICE, which is the exchange that in New York that coffee is traded on, is decoupled from what's happening in the physical market, and just kind of speculation has taken over. And so, I quit giving up on trying to predict what's going to happen ahead. I should be happy, as my family raises coffee, and I think they are, but I'm always fearful for what comes next. And it's a lot like the corn and soybeans, where you have all the speculation and panic and fervor come in, and the cost of everything surges and explodes, and everybody is going to want to plant coffee now. But it can take 2.5 years to raise that crop before you get your first harvest. And so if they plant it now, okay, 2.5 years, I might get my first harvest. And by then, prices will begin to collapse. And so you're going to, and that's a lot of times what happened, right? We increase production to meet the demand. And by the time that takes place, within, a couple years or less, prices collapse. And so yes, you can kind of see there in that each one of those years that we spiked higher, 77, 97, 2011, what happened within 6 months? They collapsed. Now, not that long ago, I would have told you that's probably what's going to happen here too. But then look at what's happened in the cocoa market again. Now it's pulled back, but it didn't collapse, at least not the way it has historically. And so I don't want to make any predictions there. I'm just telling coffee lovers that this is starting to hit the market. I don't know that it's fully hit the market yet, because a lot of the larger suppliers, your Starbucks or of the world, they'll contract things out a year ahead. And so coffee that they're selling now was purchased a year ago, and so this hasn't they haven't fully digested this yet into their system. And so and so we're kind of in that same place. So we're importing coffee directly from our farm in Brazil, selling it directly to roasters, and we're having those difficult conversations right now about, look, we got to increase here our prices. It's just to kind of keep up with what's going on. And so it's hard for a lot of these small businesses to do that, to have those jumps, because are they able to pass that cost on to consumers? If not, what happens? That's what people are talking about now, is their demand destruction is going to start to take place. But that's the same thing they said with cocoa market, and I think it was happening, but yet cocoa prices are still elevated. And so, I think we could come back down, but I don't know that we're going back to 2024 levels anytime soon. It just seems like something has shifted here in the coffee market. So
it's just kind of fascinating where, it seems like an ideal crop growing year for soybeans. In many parts anyway, in Brazil, you would think that they would have outstanding coffee production this year too.
Well, you would think, but it's a perennial crop. And so a lot of the real hot, dry weather back in August, affects the harvest 9 months later in June or July. And so there's a lag, and so it takes time for that to show up. And that's what they're concerned about, is the less than desirable yields are not over yet. Brazil needs a bumper crop, and it hasn't had one in a while for their coffee. They haven't been horrible, but they've always been a little bit disappointing, just a little bit below average. And then it does that several years in a row. And that's what they're kind of forecasting again for 2025, is that it's going to be okay, but it's going to be below average again for the fourth year in a row.
Well, now let's talk about the really big issue this week. We have our Family Farm Masterclass coming up. It'll be in Des Moines, Iowa this week. It'll be on the 21st and the 22nd. Yes, we're still planning on having it, right?
Yeah. It'll warm up by Friday. So if you can get there, we should be okay. So it'll be cold when you show up, but by the weekend, supposed to get up to 30 or 40 degrees. So when you leave, it'll be warm again. So
No, we're looking forward to that. Just as a quick reminder, in case somebody out there maybe just crawled out from under a rock or something and didn't know about it, can they still attend?
yeah, we still got people signing up at the last minute. Yep. So I think we'll probably leave it open until Thursday, signing up. And yeah, so we had to add a few more tables as people sign up here at the end, but no, we're excited for it, and I think those that'll attend will really get their money's worth and really enjoy it. And I think it's I know a lot of time people see it as an investment, but it's a lot like going to college or getting an education. There's it costs a little bit of money, but you make that back in spades.
Yeah, it's going to have great information throughout the 2-day session there. Remind our audience who's going to be there as far as featured speakers again.
Well, the keynote speaker is Willie Robertson. He's speaking on Saturday afternoon, but I think we had 9 speakers in total. Dick Whitman is kind of the farm transition and management specialist. He'll be speaking most of the day Friday. We have an awesome farmer panel with Steve Henry, Eric Oberbreckling, and Lloyd Schneider there Friday afternoon. Just kind of talk about the success in their business and strategies that have worked for them on their farm. We have some social media farmers and ag entrepreneurs panel, I guess, that Zach Johnson and Zoe Kent and Rob Sharkey are going to talk about their farming operation and how their social media presence has coincided with that and made them successful. And so, a lot of different speakers and of course, we do have a risk management panel. We're going to give kind of a grain and livestock outlook as well for 2025.
Say, don't sell yourself short.
Exactly. Yeah.
Our own team was going to be there. So we'll be able to field any questions anybody has about what may be happening in the markets or maybe questions about insurance and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, we look forward to that. And again, that's coming up on the 21st and 22nd. Hey, if you want more information, just go to comstock.com. Remember, Comstock has 2 M's in it. Go there, and on the homepage on the upper right-hand corner, it'll say Masterclass on the header, and just click on that, and it'll give you all the information, where it is, how you can make reservations and all that. So anyway, we hope we can see you there. Matthew, thanks. I appreciate it. Good to visit with you again, and I'll see you at the master class. Matthew Kruse, president of Comstock Investments. That'll do it for this episode. For producer Breanne Jenkins, I'm Marlin Bohling. We'll catch you hopefully at Masterclass and otherwise next time here on the Comstock channel. Futures trading involves risk. The risk of loss in trading futures and/or options is substantial, and each investor and/or trader must consider whether this is a suitable investment. Past performance is not indicative of future results.